Welcome to another episode of Literacy Adventures with Ali. In today's adventure, we will talk about the difference between British and American English. There seems to be a lot of confusion in our country with regards to the differences between British and American English, which is why I have decided to make this video to end that confusion. And I hope it does. I hope you enjoy today's journey, today's adventure with me, and that you will join me in my next adventure as well.
You say either, and I say either. You say neither, and I say neither. Either, neither, neither. Let's call the whole thing off. You like potato, and I like patata. You like tomato, and I like tomato. Potato, patata, tomato, tomato. Oh, let's call the whole thing off. But oh, if we call the whole thing off, then we must part. And oh, if we ever part, then that might break my heart. So if you like pajamas and I like pajamas, I'll wear pajamas and give up pajamas. For we know we need each other, so we better call the calling off. Oh, let's call the whole thing off.
You say laughter, and I say laughter. You say after, and I say after. Laughter, laughter, after, after. Let's call the whole thing off. You like Havana, and I like Havana. You eat banana, and I eat banana. Havana, Havana, banana, banana. Let's call the whole thing off.
Before we even begin to talk about the differences between British and American English, we need to first understand the historical background that is associated with the British. Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh were part of a subcontinent and they were ruled by the British for almost 190 years. It was during a period of time when the British excelled all over the world and the British Empire actually expanded across several continents in the world. The British were considered the superpower at the time, and their influence was unavoidable and undoubtable. The British not only introduced English education in this region, in fact, they also laid railway tracks, which to date are being used in Pakistan and India and Bangladesh. And they also introduced their judicial system, their legal system. We to date follow in Pakistan the legal system of the British, and they also provided us with the driving system. And what I mean by that is that Pakistan is one of the few countries in the world that to date drives right hand drive cars on the left hand side of the road. So there are several things that the British left us with, but there were few influences that they took from this region as well. For the longest time, since we followed British system of education, teachers in schools across Pakistan believed that American English was indeed incorrect. However, that is far from the truth. If you think about it, for the last several decades, America is actually the country that is considered as the superpower. Their influence cannot be avoided anywhere we look at. Social media, cell phones, YouTube, internet. You watch any movie, whether it is on DVD or on Netflix, chances are 90% of them are American. And which is why their American version of English is more popular now than any other version of English in the world. So basically, we can say that there are two main types of English that are spoken in the world today. One is American and one is British, but we cannot say that either one is correct or either one is wrong. There are three main types of differences between British English and American English. So let's start with the first type, which is differences in spelling. When we talk about the differences in spelling between the British English and the American English, the very first difference is between OR and OUR words. For example, behavior, color, neighbor, flavor, favorite. If you notice, the British like to add the additional U in all of these spellings, and honestly, if you ask me, it seems impractical and unnecessary. We don't call it behavior, we call it behavior. So the U, same with color, we don't call it color, we call it color. So the additional U seems unnecessary. So Americans, for the most part, are practical in spelling their words the way they are pronounced. So they do away with all unnecessary spellings. Take a look at the other type of spelling differences, which are between ZE and SE. To begin with, the Americans don't call it a Z, they call it a Z. In any case, analyze, apologize, realize all have a Z sound. None of these words has an S sound. We don't say analyze, we don't say an apologize, we say apologize and realize. So it makes more sense to spell them with a Z instead of an S. More differences between spelling lie where words end in a vowel plus L. For example, traveled, traveler, modeling, counseling. All of these words are pronounced exactly the same way, even with the additional L or with a single L. There is no need to add an additional L in any of these words, but the British like to do so. However, the Americans, to save space, they do not add the additional L and the pronunciation is not lost. It's still pronounced the same way. Take a look at the other difference, which is between ER and RE. Center, fiber, meter, kilometer, liter, theater, all of these words in British English end with RE, whereas in American English they end in ER because they're pronounced ER. We don't say centre, we don't say fibre, we don't say metre, we say center, fiber, and meter. So it makes more sense to actually spell them ER the way they are pronounced rather than RE the way they are not pronounced. The last spelling differences between British and American English lie with the dropped E. That means, for example, ton is spelled ton whether you add the additional NE or not. Similarly, program. It's still program whether or not you add the additional ME. We don't say programmee, we don't say tonny, we say ton, we say program. Same with gram. So the British like to add the additional NE and ME, whereas the Americans do away with it. They drop the additional E and the additional M because to them the words still are pronounced exactly the same way whether or not we add these additional letters at the end. The second type of differences that lie between the British and American English are differences in pronunciation, which means these are the same words which are spelled exactly the same way, but they are pronounced differently in the US and differently in the UK. This is a vase in the UK and a vase in the USA. This is route in British English and route in American English. Interestingly enough, in Pakistan, when we talk about buses, we say route, but when we talk about Wi Fi devices, we call them routers. The reason behind that is that we inherited the bus routes from the British, but the influence for the Wi Fi routers came to us through America. The next word is fragile, which in American English is pronounced as fragile. The next word is leisure, which is pronounced as leisure as well. The next word is hostile, which in American English is often pronounced as hostile. The next word is antibiotic, which is pronounced as antibiotic in American English. Similarly, the word semi is pronounced as semi in American English. This is pronounced as schedule in British English and schedule in American English. This is pronounced as herbs as well as herbs with a silent H. The next word is pronounced as yacht in British English and yacht in American English. Similarly, this word is pronounced as yogurt in British English and yogurt in American English. This word is pronounced as advertisement as well as advertisement. This word is pronounced as lever in British English and lever in American English. The last word with regards to pronunciation is very interesting because it also involves a change in spelling. The word is inquiry, which in British English is pronounced as inquiry and spelled with an E. However, the Americans do not pronounce this word as inquiry, they pronounce it as inquiry. And because they pronounce it as inquiry, they spell it with an I because it makes more sense to pronounce a word that is called inquiry with an I. The last type of difference between British and American English is in vocabulary. And by vocabulary, I mean there are two names for the same thing in different countries because of differences in culture. So these are cultural vocabulary words that both these countries use because of colloquialism. So it has nothing to do with the language, it has more to do with differences in culture. So the same thing has two different names. The first difference is in the back part of a car, which in the British English is known as a boot and in American English is known as a trunk. The next difference is between lift and elevator, which are two names of the same thing, but in British English they're known as lifts and in American English they are known as elevators. The next big difference is between a mobile and a cell phone. So in American English, they call it a cell phone. In British English, they call it a mobile, which is why vastly across Pakistan, we call it a mobile as well. However, the interesting thing is that the Americans, whenever they do pronounce the word mobile, they drop the E at the end for some reason, and they like to pronounce this word as mobile. The next word is pavement and sidewalk. Pavement is a British term, sidewalk is an American term. Interestingly enough, we don't call them either. We call it a footpath. The next word is quite interesting. Crisps are what we call chips in Pakistan because they are known as chips in America. However, the same thing is known as crisps in British English. Interestingly enough, what the British call chips in the UK, we call French fries. The next difference is between flat and apartment. The British like to call it a flat, the Americans like to call it an apartment. The next difference is between biscuits and cookies. The British like to call them biscuits, the Americans like to call them cookies. The next difference is between torch and flashlight. The Americans like to call it a flashlight, the British like to call it a torch. However, in American English, a torch is also a flame at the end of a stick, very much like the ones carried in the Olympics. The next difference is between a lorry and a truck, two names for the same thing. However, interestingly enough, they were referred to as lorries in Pakistan up until the 1970s, but after that, because of American influence, today we only refer to them as trucks. However, to date, truck stations in Pakistan are referred to as lorry addas. The term lorry, of course, has transpired into lari over the course of time, which people think is either the name of a place or an Urdu word, but it's actually a derivation of the actual word lorry. The next difference is between petrol and gasoline. The Americans like to call it a gasoline, which is why they call their petrol pumps gas stations, because gas is short for gasoline. They don't sell gas in America at petrol pumps at all. In the UK, they call it petrol, and which is why they call petrol pumps, and we call them petrol pumps as well. The next difference is between a taxi and a cab. Taxi is a British term, and interestingly enough, if you think about it, in the UK, most taxis are in black color. Whereas in America, the word cab is used for a taxi, and most cabs in America are yellow in color. If you think about it, to date, the black taxis that run in Karachi or across Pakistan, we refer to them as taxis, and the ones that are yellow in color, we refer to them as cabs. The reason for that is that up until the late 80s, we only had black taxis in Pakistan. However, in 1990, the then Prime Minister announced a scheme of yellow cabs, and because they were yellow, he had to call them cabs. So the term yellow cabs entered Pakistan, and since then, we refer to both black and yellow individually. The last difference is between a garden and a yard. A yard is a terminology used in America, and garden is a term used in Britain. However, in Pakistan, we usually refer to it as lawn. Thank you for joining me in today's adventure. If you liked this video, then please subscribe and like and hit the notification bell. If you want to know more about me, then please check out my bio in the About section of my channel. If you want to contact me for conducting training sessions, then please send me an email at the email address shown on the screen.